Small, often unremarkable, made of metal, sometimes plastic, yet it holds immense power. It controls access to homes, treasures, secrets, and vehicles. It can grant freedom or deny it. The history of the key is not just a tale of metal and mechanics. It's a story of human innovation, trust, security, and culture. From the earliest civilizations to the modern age of digital locks, the key has been a silent witness to history, evolving alongside us to meet our needs for privacy, protection, and control. Let's begin at the very start. The first keys. Ancient beginnings, circa 3000 BCE. Thousands of years ago, as humans settled into cities and built homes, the need to protect belongings emerged. Around 3000 BCE, in ancient Egypt and Mesopotamia, the earliest known keys appeared. These were not the metal keys we know today, but simple wooden devices, often large and crude, used to secure doors or storage chests. In Egypt, archaeologists have found evidence of wooden locks and keys in tombs, particularly in the Nile Valley, where wealthy families sought to protect their goods from theft. These early locks were basic, often called pin locks. They consisted of a wooden bolt with holes into which pins dropped to secure it. The key was a wooden stick with pegs that matched the pin's arrangement. When inserted, the key lifted the pins, allowing the bolt to slide open. These keys were large, sometimes as long as a forearm, and required skill to carve. They were used in homes, granaries, and temples, where priests guarded sacred objects. In Mesopotamia, similar systems existed, with clay tablets describing locks used to secure city gates and storehouses. The materials of these early keys were simple, wood, sometimes reinforced with bone or cord. They were labor-intensive to make, requiring precise carving to match the lock's pins. Only the wealthy, or those with valuable goods, used them, as most people relied on guards or hidden storage. The key's role was practical, but also symbolic, representing control over access and ownership. In Egyptian art, keys were sometimes depicted in the hands of gods or pharaohs, suggesting their connection to power and protection. The invention of these early keys is not attributed to a single person, as they likely developed independently in different regions. However, they're spread across the ancient world, through trade routes like those connecting Egypt to the Levant, shows how humans shared solutions to common problems. These wooden keys were the first step in a long history of securing what mattered most. Keys in the classical world, Greece and Rome, 500 BCE to 500 CE. By 500 BCE, as civilizations like Greece and Rome grew, keys and locks became more sophisticated. In Greece, artisans began crafting keys from bronze and iron, materials that were stronger and more durable than wood. These keys were used with early pin and tumbler locks, an improvement over Egyptian designs. The lock consisted of a bolt with tumblers, metal pins of varying lengths that had to be lifted to the correct height by a key. Greek keys were often L-shaped or sickle-shaped, designed to reach into the lock and align the tumblers. In Rome, by the 1st century CE, keys became more common. Roman keys were made of bronze, iron, or sometimes silver for the wealthy. They ranged in size from small, finger-sized keys for jewelry boxes to larger ones for doors and gates. Roman locks were more complex, often using ward systems, where the key had to navigate a series of obstacles, wards, inside the lock to turn. These keys were sometimes intricately designed, with handles shaped like animals or geometric patterns, reflecting Rome's advanced metalworking skills. Keys in the classical world were used for practical purposes, securing homes, shops, and temples, but also held cultural significance. In Greece, keys were associated with Hestia, the goddess of the hearth, symbolizing the protection of the home. In Rome, keys were given to brides during wedding ceremonies, representing their new role as guardians of the household. Keys were also buried with the dead, believed to unlock the afterlife or protect graves from robbers. The production of keys required skilled blacksmiths who forged and shaped metal with precision. Locks and keys were handmade, making them expensive, so they were primarily used by merchants, priests, and the elite. However, simpler versions appeared in markets, suggesting that even modest households began to use them. The spread of Roman engineering carried these designs across the empire, from Britain to North Africa, laying the groundwork for future innovations. Keys in the Middle Ages, symbols of power, 500 to 1500 CE. With the fall of the Roman Empire, Europe entered the Middle Ages, a time when keys became both practical tools and symbols of authority. Iron became the primary material for keys, as it was abundant and strong. Medieval keys were often large, sometimes a foot long, designed for heavy wooden doors in castles, churches, and monasteries. In castles, keys were critical for security. Large ornate keys, often decorated with crosses or floral patterns, were carried by stewards or lords to unlock gates, treasure rooms, or armories. In churches, keys were symbolic as well as functional. The keys of St. Peter, depicted in Christian art, represented spiritual authority, and physical keys were used to secure reliquaries holding sacred relics. Smaller keys were used for personal items like wooden chests containing documents or jewelry, and were often worn on belts as a sign of status.
In the Islamic world, keys were also significant. Artisans in Persia and the Middle East crafted intricate iron and bronze keys, sometimes inlaid with silver or gold, for palaces and mosques. These keys were used in sophisticated ward locks, reflecting advanced metalworking techniques. In China, during the Tang and Song dynasties, bronze keys continued to be used, often with decorative handles, for securing homes and bureaucratic offices. Medieval keys were heavy and required regular maintenance to prevent rust. Locksmithing emerged as a respected trade, with guilds forming in cities like Paris and London. Locks and keys were still costly, so they were mainly used by the wealthy, clergy, or merchants. Common people relied on simpler methods, like bolts or hidden caches, to secure their belongings. The key's dual role as a tool and a symbol of trust made it a powerful object, often passed down through families or bestowed as a mark of responsibility. The Renaissance to Industrial Age, refinement and mass production, 6th centuries. The Renaissance brought renewed interest in craftsmanship, and keys became more refined. By the 16th century, European locksmiths were creating intricate ward locks with multiple wards, requiring keys with complex bits to navigate them. These keys were made of iron or brass with handles featuring detailed engravings, such as coats of arms or floral motifs. They were used in palaces, universities, and wealthy homes where security was paramount. In the 17th and 18th centuries, keys became smaller and more portable as lock designs improved. The lever lock, introduced in the 1770s by English locksmith Robert Barron, used levers that had to be lifted to a precise height by the key. This made locks more secure, and keys became more standardized, with flat, toothed designs. Brass became a popular material as it resisted corrosion better than iron. Keys were now used not only for doors but also for safes, clocks, and mechanical devices, reflecting the era's growing technological complexity. The Industrial Revolution in the 19th century transformed key production. Factories in England, Germany, and the United States began mass-producing keys using machines, making them cheaper and more accessible. In 1861, American inventor Linus Yale Jr. revolutionized lock design with the cylinder lock, which used a small, flat key with serrated edges to align pins in a rotating cylinder. This design, known as the Yale lock, was more secure and easier to produce than ward or lever locks. The Yale key, with its familiar notched shape, became the standard for household locks worldwide. Mass production meant keys were no longer just for the elite. By the late 19th century, they were used in homes, offices, and factories across Europe and North America. Keys were made in various sizes, from tiny ones for padlocks to larger ones for bank vaults. The rise of urbanization and property ownership increased demand for locks and keys as people sought to secure their homes and businesses in growing cities. The modern key from metal to digital, 20th to 21st centuries. The 20th century saw keys evolve alongside technology. The Yale cylinder lock remained dominant, with refinements making keys smaller and more precise. Steel and brass alloys improved durability, and keys were produced in vast quantities for homes, cars, and offices. By the mid-20th century, keys were everywhere, from ignition keys for automobiles to skeleton keys for older buildings. In the late 20th century, electronic keys emerged. Transponder keys, introduced in the 1980s for cars, contained microchips that communicated with the vehicle's ignition system, adding a layer of security. Key cards, using magnetic strips or RFID technology, became common in hotels and offices by the 1990s. These keys were lightweight and programmable, allowing access to be granted or revoked easily. In the 21st century, smart keys took center stage. Smartphone apps and biometric systems like fingerprint or facial recognition began replacing traditional keys for homes and cars. Key fobs with remote locking systems became standard for vehicles, while smart locks allowed users to control access via Bluetooth or Wi-Fi. These digital keys are more secure and convenient, though they rely on electricity and software unlike their mechanical predecessors. Keys remain culturally significant. They symbolize access, trust, and responsibility. Think of the key to the city or a housewarming key. In art and literature, keys represent secrets or opportunities, as in phrases like unlocking potential. Technologically, keys continue to evolve, with innovations like quantum cryptography promising even more secure systems. From wooden pegs to digital codes, the key's history reflects humanity's quest to protect what matters most. A legacy of security. The key's history spans over 5,000 years, from the wooden pegs of ancient Egypt to the smart locks of today. It began as a simple tool to secure homes and treasures, evolving through bronze, iron, and steel into a symbol of trust and authority. Innovations like the Yale cylinder lock and electronic keys made security accessible to all, while digital advancements continued to redefine what a key can be. Across cultures and centuries, keys have protected homes, temples, and secrets, their small size belying their immense importance. The story of the key is one of human ingenuity, crafting solutions to safeguard our world. Looking forward, keys continue to evolve. Smart locks, encrypted digital keys, and biometric access will reduce the reliance on physical keys. However, physical keys remain simple, reliable, and trusted in everyday life. The history of the key is a story of human innovation and the desire to control our environment and protect what we value.